Hey guys, Dr. Sharma here. Is it just me or does studying feel like such a drag? Like, let's be real, I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who actually love studying, and that's, great. But if you're like me, you probably enjoy your time not studying much more. So when you have huge amounts of information that you need to cover in a short amount of time, it's super important to actually stick to a schedule and stay organized. Like, I don't even like sticking to schedules myself because I'm kind of a spontaneous person and I do things on a whim. But the USMLE Step 1 is the biggest exam that you have to study for, so you have to buckle down. First things first, and I have to say that there's no such thing as a perfect schedule. Yeah, that's right. If you can get that out of your head, then you're gonna stop spending time worrying about whether you're doing the right thing at the right time and if it's literally perfect or not. An amazing schedule is simply one that's gonna get you through an allotted amount of work in an allotted amount of time. Remember that this just allows you to go through with a bare bones idea of how you're gonna go out your days and weeks throughout school so that you can save time and energy in the long run instead of having to make a schedule daily. Now, another great reason that you should have a schedule is that you may have been like me and used a very few amount of resources that you had to get through. Now, notice how I said the word few. As you know, I think that using fewer resources is more likely to help you memorize those pages and memorize that text rather than using a lot of resources. If you had a ton of different places where you're getting information, it would take you way longer to get through all of it. And on top of that, the same information might come up but just presented differently, which is time consuming and kind of annoying. The most important thing to scheduling is going to be finding out which resources you're going to be using and then literally just sticking with them. My favorites that I use are First Aid for the USMLE Step 1, the Pathoma videos and the book chapters themselves, Sketchy Micro and some of the Sketchy Pharmacology videos, a way to review your books, and a reviewing mechanism such as flashcards or a review sheet, and last but not least, question banks, which I use too, and there was a USMLE RX as well as USMLE World. Divide your book into reading it as chapters and then subdivide it into separate reading sections. The easiest way to do this, for example, would be to take cardiology and divide that up into developmental anatomy, physiology, pathology, and then the pharmacology section. Now that a single chapter of your book is now divvied up and divided into sections, decide how long you're going to need with that particular chapter. You may have to read each of the sections taking from 15 minutes up to 2 hours depending on what it is, and then divide that up into your day when you write it on your calendar. You may actually need about 2 to 3 hours to cover the pathology portion in particular of cardiology itself, and overall you may spend an entire day on that schedule getting through cardiology, and if you need a day and a half, so be it. So that means that if I took a day and a half to review my cardiology review times, I would be starting another chapter or another divvied up section in my first aid book to start that same day. And then you start it off again and you keep going through the divvied up chapters that you've decided you're gonna spend an allotted amount of time on reviewing. Next, do the same thing for your Pathoma book, which is mostly just going to encompass pathology. You may even schedule it into your agenda on the same days that you're doing that particular organ system in your first aid. Spend at least 1 to 2 hours a day watching videos because this really breaks up the monotony of reading books. It helps you review topics that you may not have written down in your Pathoma book itself or first aid, and it allows your mind to take a little bit of a break. But I wouldn't suggest watching too many video hours because again, active learning is going to be the best, which we're going to be getting into. This is where I would add in some supplemental video lectures such as those from Sketchy Micro or Sketchy Pharmacology. There isn't a particular book for this, so I typically just followed through in my first aid. Sometimes I would even use a colored printer and print off some of the pictures that I wanted to remember. Now this might be a little bit expensive, but hey, we're not here to be stingy right now, okay? The most important part of learning and studying for an exam is going to be the active learning, which we're going to get into now. The way that I reviewed and actively learned and asked myself questions was going to be flashcards, a review sheet, and then at the end of this, I'm going to talk about the question banks that I used. I made these flashcards using good old pencil and paper. I would simply rip off a sheet of paper or cut it into a bunch of squares, and I had a lot of blank sheets, and then I went through and asked myself questions that I didn't know or didn't remember, or maybe if I got something wrong from a question bank. On the other side, you can either write the answer, or preferably what I would do is write the page number in first aid or in Pathoma where I would have found that information. That way, when I open up my book and Pathoma book, I can go ahead and hunker down into the exact diagram or little image or sketch that I had created to help myself remember that. If you get a flashcard wrong, put it in a separate deck that you're going to be reviewing either later that day or early again the next day. If you get that flashcard right, you can put it into a separate pile that's going to be review the next day or review in 2 days, or just entirely crumple up and throw that flashcard altogether. Now, you really don't need anything fancy or some sort of fancy software such as Anki, but if you already know how to use the software or have a friend who knows how to use it and can help you, then go ahead and use it. I would just recommend against downloading a big gigabyte file that's going to be presenting you information in a way that you're not used to, because remember that reviewing the information that you've created for yourself is the best way to review. Finally, you need to be doing questions every day. You need to be hitting this question bank whether it's going to be USMLE World or USMLE RX, because the exam itself is about critically thinking and getting through a question vignette and then answering it. That's simply just the nature of the beast. If you're just reading textbooks and reviewing and watching videos, you're not going to get an idea of how a question is going to be presented to you, and you're just going to get things wrong on the real exam. Trust me, that really wouldn't go well, so you need to be doing questions every single day. I like to review my questions on tutor mode, and I can make a separate video on how to really get through through USMLE World in a really good technique. The reason I use tutor is because I need to see my wrongs right away. You need to be able to condition yourself out of getting the wrong answer and immediately thinking about the right answer and what mnemonic you're gonna help yourself remember it, rather than doing a bunch of questions and then reviewing them either later in the day or the next day, because sometimes you might even forget, and then you're not really correcting your wrong answer immediately. I highly suggest scheduling study breaks such as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snack time so that you can stay fueled, gym time so that you can stay fit, and just some mental space time so that you can stay sane, and I would try to call family and friends. I really hope that these techniques serve you well and that you can create an awesome schedule that's gonna help you get through big study time. As always, please like and subscribe, and please let me know how I'm doing. If you guys have any questions, please comment below and I can make a video on exactly whatever you'd want to hear about more. As always, good luck.